I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Amanda, for doing this. So just a quick introduction of what shared use kitchens are. They are facilities that can accommodate multiple entrepreneurs, food entrepreneurs who maybe don't have the initial resources to lease their own kitchen space to launch their business. And oftentimes shared use kitchens also provide some wraparound services such as like business development, marketing, food safety regulation guidance, and that kind of thing. But they're really spaces where food businesses can get a toehold and kind of prove their product value and get access to markets as they're trying to build their revenue sources and so on. And a little bit of information about Summit Food Coalition and how we're involved with this. We actually were an alliance of people and organizations committed to building a just, vibrant, and sustainable local food system. And we're located in Summit County, Ohio. The largest city in our area is Akron. And we do our work currently in 4 buckets. We call them the A's and E's: access, advocacy, education, and entrepreneurship. And so the entrepreneurship piece, we really try to support local food entrepreneurs and encourage ways for people to support their success, whether that is through buying their products or helping to advocate for them through policies that make it a little bit easier for them to get their start. And so our work with shared use kitchens is a little bit different. We actually don't manage a shared use kitchen, but we've known for about the past 20 or so years that a shared use kitchen was something that our community needed. But no one in the community really had a facility or the resources to make that happen for the community. And it was probably in 2015 and 2016 that there was a small group of volunteers that really started to dig into what the actual demand was for kitchen space in Summit County and Akron specifically. So they sent out surveys to would-be food entrepreneurs and asked them, you know, what kind of space are you looking for? What kind of needs do you have? What kind of products are you looking to develop? But once they got that data, they really realized that as a group of volunteers, they didn't have the capacity to take it forward in any kind of tactical way. So they asked Summit Food Coalition if we would kind of steward that information and look for opportunities to partner with people or identify organizations that might be able to carry that work forward. And we actually were able to get a small amount of funding from the Fund for Our Economic Future back in 2017. And the Fund for Our Economic Future, if you aren't familiar with it, they're a group of foundations in Northeast Ohio that are really looking to support economic development opportunities in various ways. And so they saw this opportunity exploring information about how to develop a shared use kitchen as something that was worth supporting in some way. So we received about $3,000, which was not very much, but we received $3,000 to do what we could to connect local food entrepreneurs with kitchen spaces. And in thinking about, you know, how we could best utilize those resources, we knew that you know, we certainly couldn't launch a kitchen with $3,000. So what we decided to do was really take a look at what the underutilized spaces in our community look like. So we worked with Summit County Public Health to get the full list of licensed kitchens in Summit County. And certainly we had to do a lot of purging of that list. You know, we knew that places like Subway and McDonald's weren't really candidates for making their space available to entrepreneurs. So once we sorted through that list, and it was pretty extensive, I think there was something like 3,000 kitchens on the list, we decided to prioritize those kitchens that were at churches, community centers, and then whittled it down even further to what are the kitchen spaces that have a really wonderful reputation of being community-minded, who in our coalition has a relationship with that particular facility or organization, and really started to identify those kitchens that were candidates for potentially making their kitchen space available to would-be entrepreneurs. But we knew that identifying the kitchens was only part of it. A lot of what those organizations, if they're a church organization or a community organization, in order to have a productive conversation with their board or their governance group, we knew that we were going to need to provide them some information so that they could have productive conversations to determine whether or not making their space available to entrepreneurs to use in that way is really a good fit for their organization. And likewise, we knew that entrepreneurs often, I field a lot of phone calls from entrepreneurs asking how to get started. We knew that they also needed some place to start, a starting point, how to go about launching their food business. So we put together a couple of toolkits, one each for the host kitchens and one for the local food entrepreneurs. So some of the items that we put in there, we worked with both the Ohio Department of Agriculture as well as Summit County Department of Health, their food safety departments, to come up with some general guidance on launching a food business. We had to keep it very general though, because each food business is very different and what rules and regulations apply to their particular products. So we were trying to keep it general enough that it could apply to everybody, but give them enough information that they could start down that path. We also worked with a lawyer to put together a sample contract, and we included that in the toolkit as well. We also did a lot of research on sample kitchen guidelines and pulled together some information from a lot of the different sources that we identified to come up with sample kitchen use guidelines and scheduling and so on and so forth. But we really wanted to provide each entity with enough information to get them started or to have productive conversations to determine whether or not this was right for them. And so once we had those toolkits together, we decided to start reaching out to the churches, and that was a really long process. Reaching out to people, pastors are extremely busy people. Same thing with community organizations and that kind of thing who have kitchens, reaching out to them, sending them emails and letters and following up pretty doggedly. But we would reach out to them and often meet with the host kitchen, potential host kitchen, to talk with them about what this really was all about, what kind of need there was in our community, what kinds of activities might be happening in their kitchen. We got a lot of questions around, liability, whether or not they would be liable for XYZ. And it wasn't really our role necessarily to tell them what they needed to do, but really give them enough information so that they could have those conversations with their group. And then that often took a long time for people to determine whether or not they wanted to sign on to our network. But once they did, we put their information on our website. But we did decide to put it on our website without their contact information so that folks would kind of come through us. A lot of the kitchens that we work with in our Summit Kitchen Connect network are rather small scale, and so they can only accommodate maybe one entrepreneur. So we wanted to be able to guide the inquiring entrepreneurs to a facility that could actually potentially accommodate them. And we had a couple of folks a couple of host kitchens tell us that, we have one person in our space, and having worked with them for a little while, we realized that we can't really accommodate anybody else at this time. So we have to kind of, not have our information out there any longer. But we currently have about 8 kitchens in our kitchen network. And I've had probably about 50 inquiries from entrepreneurs since we launched this project late summer 2017. A lot of the questions that we received from host kitchens were things around, is our kitchen too small to do this? Or do we have enough equipment? Do we need to purchase specific equipment for these businesses? And really providing them information on, what they should maybe provide for the entrepreneurs versus what the entrepreneurs are responsible for providing. Some of the challenges of this particular model, I will say, are it's the fact that, we don't have dedicated staff to be able to facilitate those connections. I'm continually getting inquiries from entrepreneurs, and taking the time to meet with them and introduce them to various kitchens is really time intensive because of the nature of food businesses. Regulations fall on various food businesses in different ways. So it is important to have those conversations with them. But if you don't have dedicated staff to be able to do that, it's really tough to keep that momentum going. We actually don't charge a fee either to the host kitchens or to the entrepreneurs. It's really tough to ask entrepreneurs when they're just getting started to spend money on something like that, like an introduction service. So that's been really tough. And a lot of the kitchen facilities that we're working with, our churches, and their budgets are super duper tight, as we all know. So it's really difficult to, find sources of funding that can support this kind of work. It is really a challenging model. But one of the things that we've seen develop out of this, one of the folks in our network actually is now in the process of revamping their kitchen to be utilized as a shared use kitchen. And we're pretty excited to see that development. I think that they saw the kind of inquiries we were getting, and they actually had the space to be able to remodel, and sought funding to transform their kitchen to one that multiple entrepreneurs could use. So we're pretty excited about that development. And think that we can still provide the service that we're providing to folks, because not a shared use kitchen doesn't work out for everyone. I know, as a small food business owner myself, the shared use space, we utilize the kitchen so much now that it wouldn't be feasible for us to do. But for those who are just starting, the shared use kitchen model is really great, but maybe then they can graduate to be introduced to some of the folks in our network. So we're really looking at how we can continue to provide that service to entrepreneurs who are maybe a little bit further along the path than just launching their business to start. So that's what we're doing in Summit County right now. And, given its challenges, we think it's worth looking at doing that if you have some dedicated funding or have some opportunities to work with interns or business interns that might be able to facilitate those inquiries and introductions and maintain those relationships with the host kitchens. But as our project stands right now, it's kind of in a holding pattern. Oh, that's really, I have a question from Amelie about whether or not we've engaged the local community economic development staff to inform them of the demand to support food entrepreneurs, and if so, what was their response? We actually have someone in the mayor's office here in Akron that is an entrepreneur advocate. And so they are very well aware of our project and the demand. And they have been supportive. They send folks our way. They know that as a local food entrepreneur myself, that I can provide really, tangible information to those folks. But I am hoping, I'm the sole employee of the coalition, and I just don't have time to field those kinds of inquiries all the time anymore. And now with the development of this kitchen, the shared use kitchen, it's actually Community Development Corporation that is doing that. They are now starting to send those questions over there, which is really great. And we have a very tight relationship with that CDC. So I envision us being able to provide some support to them in an ongoing fashion and be able to jump in from time to time as needed.
Thanks, Beth, for reading that. I read it out loud, but I was muted. So, so next we have Jodee. So Jodee, if you wanted to do your screen share. And if there's any other questions for Beth, feel free to submit them in the meantime, and we can make sure to answer them at the end.
Okay. Can everybody see that okay?
Looks good.
All right. So my name is Jodee Ellett. As Amanda said, thank you for having us today. It's nice to speak at someone else. I have lots of speakers for the Indiana Food Council Network, and so now the shoe's on the other foot. When we did a project through Purdue University through funding with the SARE Research and Education Grant, part of their grant portfolio. And it's while I was working at Purdue Extension statewide as a local foods coordinator, we had a small team that sort of had a bit of turnover, which then was fortuitous in sort of meeting Ashley. But I'll share with you the interesting thing when literally the week our grant was awarded, I got a notification on a national sort of local food listserv that Colorado State was looking for survey participants for a shared use kitchen survey. And I was like, what? It's the same thing we were just sort of awarded to do a grant. So that's how I met Ashley Colpaart, and which ended up being a really great thing for our project. And I'll go through some of that. Just a very brief overview of the project. The research part was a sort of a national descriptive survey of kitchens. My inspiration for some of the ideas on this project was the work that Michigan State had been doing on food hubs, and sort of really getting a good look at what food hubs are doing. And we really wanted to look at the economic contributions using InPlan. It's an economic input-output modeling software, and ideally wanted to create a sort of benchmarking like they did with food hubs, but I think we're a little early on that, and there's a lot of opportunity now, and especially because Ashley continues to cultivate this really strong network of really putting some good numbers to kitchens now. We also did a lot of outreach and some technical assistance. We took people on tours to kitchens, and for me this was one of the most exciting parts of the project. We visited, I think, more than 10 kitchens in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Kentucky, sort of 4 different day-long trips. Each trip we visited 3 kitchens in a day. And then we ended up creating this shared use kitchen toolkit and an opening community facilities toolkit, kind of like Beth was just describing. I knew that was a real need in Extension because Extension educators get inquiries like that all the time, and had a day-long workshop at the NACDEP National Convening of Community Development Educators in Cleveland, actually, a few years ago. So the national survey, it was North Central focused, but it was sent nationally. We tried to find every potential kitchen we could. So of course we missed a lot of those smaller casual kitchens, like was just described. We conducted online, and then only kitchen managers or owners can respond. And the idea was to sort of get a sense of who these managers were and what kind of kitchens they were running. And same with the tours. And so I'll just go through some of the results of that national survey. I think, yeah, conducted in March 2017. So it's more than 2 years old now. It definitely could stand to be repeated. So one of the things we noticed was managers' years of experience in the food industry. And you can see from the slide that 38%, majority of kitchen owners or managers had more than 5 years experience just in the food industry. And 57% have a bachelor's degree, 90% white, 50% male. And then looking at them personally as the manager, 44% noted that the kitchen and running and managing this kitchen was the main source of their income. This I thought was really interesting, technical assistance that the kitchens provide to clients who use the kitchens. And so we had them choose from a selection of items that we had heard other kitchen managers discuss, and the top thing was help with licenses and certifications. Again, like Beth was describing, there's a lot of assistance that is needed in that food safety realm, regulatory realm for food businesses. Then business counseling, really assembling a business plan. Food businesses are notoriously slim margin businesses, and getting them started and launched and in the realistic confines of their markets is important. It was an important feature of the type of technical assistance that managers were offering their clients. Food safety regulation, product development, branding and marketing, just going down the list here, and then help finding buyers. And the idea, it's nice to think, kitchens, oh, we have a kitchen here you go. But in reality, nearly 80% of kitchen owners and managers were providing technical assistance to the users of their kitchens. And then the kitchen managers themselves need technical assistance. The biggest place they sought assistance was the Small Business Development Center, then University Extension, university, community development organizations, chambers of commerce, community colleges, consultancy firm. So really getting themselves the technical assistance they needed to manage and run or own this shared use kitchen is what they were seeking. Legal status of the kitchen businesses, a full 48% surveyed were nonprofit kitchens. And you can see there LLCs being the next largest, and then sort of a combination of a lot of things. And we had a sense that kitchens might be community driven, so you'll see in a minute that does play out. So 85% of the kitchens that we surveyed had started in the last 10 years prior to 2017. And just a lot less prior, that sort of uptick in things that happened after 2008, and maybe that's a part of it, and maybe it was just a lot more technical support. It's hard to say, but just that building awareness and building of small businesses is really important. That's happened in the last 10 years. So we put out some concepts of what a kitchen might be. And people could sort of look at that list and decide what their kitchen fit into. We didn't, we loosely defined them, and so kitchen managers were self-identifying what they thought their kitchen was. And so 38%, the largest percent, were saying, yeah, my kitchen's a kitchen incubator, and I incubate businesses in this kitchen. Shared use kitchen was second with 32%, again, a general definition. And these are, again, who are answering the survey. Multiple use, our kitchen is multiple use. Maybe it's a kitchen incubator, maybe it's used for a catering company, something like that. Co-packer, processing center, very low. Community kitchen, sort of 3%. And sort of getting a sense of the size of the kitchens, we asked them about how, the sort of square footage of their facility. It's all different, just like every kitchen's really quite different. And more importantly, that their square footage, what their square footage includes, 90% of the kitchens include storage as a big part of their square footage. And then of course shared space, some office space, some meeting space, loading dock, and then a store, someone would have a storefront retail. And so just getting a sense of, you know, how many of these kitchens are providing what sort of things in their space. And the capacity of the kitchen to produce different products. So whether, you know, this chart doesn't sort of delineate in between who sort of, it's sort of an equipment equation. Okay, so what kind of things can your kitchen produce, but also sort of what is the demand, the local demand for production of certain products. So topping the list, sauces, and then breads, cookies, other baked goods, jams, jelly, syrups. Some of these are more specific, like fermented food. Some kitchens are certified for allergy sensitive production of foods. And sort of just looking at this different foods and different uses. And then we asked, well, what types of equipment do you have? And because these are the experts, these are the folks that have been in the food service realm for a while, they self-identified as, well, we have basic equipment here in this kitchen, or we have specialized equipment. And we saw from our tours, that was really interesting, that a lot of time that specialized and highly specialized equipment comes along when there's a particular client who needs a specialized piece of equipment. And they often negotiate with the kitchen, you know, hey, I really need this piece of equipment in the kitchen, or I need my own dedicated cooler. And so the kitchen often negotiates with the client, the food business owner, like who pays for it, you know, do they pay for the square footage on the ground? And so equipment is constantly being modified or improved, and maybe things move in, things move out based on the usage of the kitchens. So I thought that dynamic was really interesting. And then, as I mentioned before, 60% of the kitchens we surveyed were community oriented, meaning they're not just profit oriented, but for the well-being of the community. Some do both, and some are just profit oriented. Like, I run this kitchen, you know, that 44% of people who are deriving their primary income from managing a kitchen might often be profit oriented kitchens. And then some kind of general descriptions about how they view their kitchen. Most of the top two is really talking about, we think the role of our kitchen is to incubate businesses and to give specialty food businesses a leg up and to get started. Lower barriers, and then also lowering risks of failure, certainly financial loss. And again, offering the resources to help folks get going. And a look at how kitchens, where they got their funds to launch a shared use kitchen. And so government funding, top the list, in-kind, support donations, bank loans, private investors, founders own funds, right there with private investors. So people really passionate about what they're doing. And almost 50% of these kitchens are saying, yeah, we're fully functional without being dependent on grant funding. And then a variation of some dependency on grant funding in order to stay operational, probably again more related to how community oriented they are. And we asked them to sort of self-evaluate, you know, how do you feel, how successful is your kitchen? And I think all positive, really looking at the majority of people saying, you know, somewhere between moderately and extremely successful. And so the second part of our project was using IMPLAN. The USDA had put together the, it's called localfoodeconomics.com. It was a toolkit for how to use IMPLAN to inform an economic model of local food activities. And the toolkit was sort of designed to help people who've never used IMPLAN to use IMPLAN on local food. And we had a bit of turnover on our project, so we actually had someone who'd used IMPLAN on other things and then was trying to use IMPLAN on the kitchens themselves, not necessarily the businesses that use the kitchens. And so that becomes a really difficult task in IMPLAN, because what IMPLAN tries to model is the economic contribution of that entity. If you've ever seen a news headline like, oh, this business is coming to our town and they're going to add 17 jobs or 120 jobs, you know, not only does the business say that, but they talk about this sort of multiplier, right? And so Tanya was sort of finally able to get at a multiplier through ripple effects of shared use kitchens. Definitely the startup cost for the shared use kitchen was the biggest boost to a local economy in a geographic location. But as you can see there, she was able to draw some conclusions on how every person hired in the kitchen, an additional 2 people are hired in the economy. Most shared use kitchens have a single, manager owner. And so the recommendation, of course, is to generate IMPLAN results working with the businesses who use a particular kitchen. And that's going to tell a very different story in terms of the contribution of that kitchen to the local economy when you factor in the users of the kitchen. Some of the outreach, we were really excited, and this is my last slide here, and all of these things are listed on that the SARE grant report website, the Shared Kitchen Toolkit. I have printed copies here. They're very nice. I was looking today, one of the things I really liked about what Ashley and her team put together and people really enjoy is sort of a definition of the types of the models, emerging definitions and models of shared use kitchens. And then we also created this community facilities toolkit, and that really, like your churches and things that your summit organization did, this is sort of a guide to help a community facility consider whether or not they want to take this challenge on and move into that sector and manage a shared use kitchen. And that's it from me.
I just want to mention to everybody, I have a copy of that shared use kitchen toolkit Jodee's mentioning, so if you'd like to borrow it from me, I'm happy to drop it off to you at the Ohio Food Policy Network Summit shortly. So if you'd like to borrow that copy, let me know and I'll bring it for you. There's one question, I think we sort of covered it, but it says, is there any information on how shared use kitchen models are funded and set up for operation, and if kitchens have had to close and why? So I know that toolkit Jodee held up does have an extensive chapter on funding. So I don't know if you want to expand on that at all.
Well, yeah, and I think we were trying to tease out kitchens that had closed because they did close, and this was again was a driver for writing the grant is people really stepping into it without full knowledge of how much it takes to manage a shared use kitchen. But it was really hard, of course, to find people who had closed a kitchen to respond to the survey. And so looking at what's happening nationally and the sort of things that the food corridor is supporting, hopefully less of those kitchens are going to be closing now than they used to, because there's a lot more support and resources around for kitchens as a result of the work that's gone on, sort of universities, and definitely through the food corridor.
All right, let's see. I think there's one other question, but we're going to hold it till the end because we're going to let Ashley start. So Elizabeth, we will get to your question at the end.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for having me. So my journey with shared use kitchens started, right around when I met Jodee. I was doing a national survey of shared use kitchens. My desire was to find ways to leverage the local food economy by specifically looking at underutilized assets in the food space and how we can better connect those resources. So at the time, I was the coordinator for the Northern Colorado Food Cluster, which was looking at kind of network effects and clustering of businesses and relationships that way. And in that work, really was hearing from a lot of food businesses similar to the Summit Group that they needed access to commercial kitchen space, and there was a lack of access to those spaces. People didn't know how to find those spaces. So I did this national survey of 140 shared use kitchens across the country, and then really started digging in and seeing that these kitchens are actually oftentimes the center of their local food system. And so that was very interesting to me. So I'm going to go through some kind of shared kitchen resources that kind of goes through the work that I've been doing for the last 4 years in this space in hopes that it's helpful to you all in your journeys with this topic. So trend-wise, obviously, we kind of went over this stuff, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the first two slides, but we've seen rapid growth in this space.
Hey, Ashley?
Yeah.
You have to share your screen. We can't see your PowerPoint. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
The green arrow at the bottom with the box that says share.
Oh, I don't see that box. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, here. And this one. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Now, can you all see?
Yep, we are good. You just have to put it into presentation mode. Otherwise, we can see the slide deck.
Okay, yeah, I just can't reach the bottom because this thing's at the bottom. Minimize. There we go. All right. Yeah, so rapid growth, we're seeing a diversity in the models of kitchens, so for-profit, nonprofit, private partner, public relationships, in addition to a food hub, all different types of models. We've seen increased public and private investment in this area. We see an expanding role of kitchens from the community and business support standpoint, so not just providing a physical space, but as was mentioned, providing more ecosystem services, and then inclusion of shared kitchens in other facilities. So we're seeing projects related to affordable housing, event centers, food hubs, workforce training, those types of things. But as can imagine, with a new kind of emerging model, there's a lot of challenges for these facilities, and it's oftentimes really hard for these kitchens to find access to resources, which is part of the work that we've been trying to do. So there's inconsistent performance among kitchens and incubators. There's a lack of open source guidance. There's been limited research. So the work that we've done with Purdue and most recently with ESI are kind of the first ecosystem reports out there related to shared kitchens. And again, limited research on the industry outcomes. So not only just knowing where these kitchens are and what they're up to, but what are the actual outcomes of these facilities, and are they working, and what is the contribution, like the in-plan study that we helped with to figure out like what the economic impact is or the community impact is of these kitchens. So in response, as been mentioned, we partnered with Sarah, with Jodee and her team to create the Shared Kitchen Toolkit. Part of the reason we were of value to the toolkit is because we do oversee a network of kitchens across the country. And so we were able to kind of glean information from those folks and aggregate up a lot of that data. So you can access that Shared Kitchen Toolkit in a lot of different places. We have a blog post here at the bottom that you can access it from our website. But it is a dense document, it's 163 pages, and it really is, as some people like to coin it, a Bible for how to start one of these kitchens. The Food Corridor, which is my company, plays in the software side of this. So many of the pain points that the kitchens that I surveyed nationally we're talking about were managing multiple tenants, managing calendars, billing their clients. And there really, we saw an opportunity to create a management platform that could connect these food entrepreneurs to these kitchens so that the kitchens could get out of the office and back into the kitchen the kitchen administrators can get out of the office and back in the kitchen with those clients and focus more on those incubation services. So many of them were, what we call Frankensteining all these different systems together, and there just wasn't a custom software that worked really well for the unique case that is a shared use kitchen. So we're similar. If you've ever booked a yoga studio through Mind Body, we are very similar just in the food space around leveraging a multi-tenant situation for a shared kitchen. So we're used by a number of the nation's top shared use kitchens. We currently have 125 kitchens that use our software, and you can see we do streamlined scheduling, so multiple equipment reservations, multiple space reservations. We do an effortless billing that ties those calendars to the billing system. So as people book time on the calendar and are using the kitchen, you can set up specific rates for specific clients if they're on a specific program. And it really is dynamic in the way that it responds to those calendar settings, which is the uniqueness of the software. We also do a bit of client management. So all the kitchens mentioned needing to track business license and insurance and food handler card, and really handling the compliance side of this business, which is a full-time job. As Beth mentioned with the summit stuff, there's so many documents that need to be handled and so many regulatory things that need to be handled. We tried to take a lot of the load off of the kitchen administrator by providing some client management tools. And then one thing we've been doing over time is just aggregating up all of our resources. So we have a resources page here on the food corridor that we basically just publish everything and try to get it out there and be the kind of center for this information. So the publications that we've are at the top, but we also aggregate stuff about business incubation services, funding, operations, etc. So just trying to be kind of an anchor of information for the kitchens. More recently, we launched another application called the Kitchen Door, and this is essentially the search tool that we've created for food businesses to go and find commercial kitchens in their area. So hopefully I can switch over my desktop with this working. I had the document out here. So can you guys see my web screen right now?
No.
No? Okay. I guess I didn't share my desktop here completely. New share, here we go.
Yeah.
We don't use Zoom, we use GoToMeeting, so I'm not as familiar with it. Now can you see Kitchen Door?
No. Can you go down to share and find that screen? Click on share.
How about now?
Nope.
I'm like literally.
Something happened, but it disappeared.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Yay!
Yes, we can see it now.
All right. So yeah. So essentially, it's free to list on the Kitchen Door. So anyone that has underutilized commercial kitchen space or a shared use kitchen can post on here. So for instance, if I were to go to type in Akron here, we can search for the kitchens, and we can see that the Well Corporation pops up there, which is mentioned by the Summit Group. We can also move out 100 miles and see additional kitchens that have posted. So the listings are free. You can see a little map, and then clients of the food corridor get a preferred listing, so they show up first in the rankings. But then, as we said, underutilized kitchens can post here, church kitchens can post here. And what we do is we send those leads directly to the kitchens. And so we're able to kind of act as a liaison service between the available kitchen spaces and then sending those leads to kitchens so that they can kind of take the relationship from there. So we don't do too much of the other coordinating services that the Summit folks were trying to do at this point in time, but we do a general screening, asking a little bit of questions for the food business to answer. And then again, people can list their space here on the kitchen, on the food corridor. And that's a super helpful thing. So other resources that we have to get as well, and I'm going to try to do new share again. Can you guys see my slides still?
Yes. just not
Perfect.
the presentation mode.
Okay, awesome. Let me go to presentation mode. Hide this. I'm having all these technical difficulties. You would think I don't own a software company. So another great resource we had, we created was the Network for Incubator and Commissary Kitchens. So this was, you know, a result of those 140 survey respondents that I had. And I had an open-ended question at the end of the survey saying, what does the industry need, or what other information do you have for us? And they basically said, I wish there was a place we could go to learn from each other, to identify best practices and really communicate with each other. And I was like, well, why doesn't that exist? Essentially, it's a business development ecosystem. So I created an online Facebook group called the Network for Incubator and Commissary Kitchens, which now has over 1,400 members. It's a private Facebook group, and you can access it also through the Food Corridor website. Yeah, we're just a private Facebook group. It's a super vibrant community. More recently, we also aggregated up all the best practices in the industry and created a best practices operations manual. So the shared kitchen ops manual will help kitchens to avoid some of the issues that many of them face, including, health department regulations, how to control storage for food safety, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a new resource that we've created. That's kind of the best practices in the industry. Basically, we're telling people, don't go at it alone. You want to make sure that if you're having a shared kitchen, that we have resources that are available for you. So another thing we recently launched was our consulting page. So we put together a consulting circle of consultants from across the country that we have partnered with on specific things like building out a shared facility design or rural development related to shared use kitchens. And we launched a page of aggregating up these consultants. You basically can go to our website, fill out a form, choose an expert, and then get connected to that expert for consultant-related services and projects. So that launched 2 weeks ago. So we're adding more resources that way. Another thing we offer is our monthly newsletter. So basically, we are trying to, kind of be the thought leader in this space. So we're aggregating up all the news and announcements related to new and emerging kitchens across the country, news from the Network for Incubator and Commissary Kitchens, updates on industry events that might be happening. We post job opportunities in this emerging industry, and really just trying to be a home base for all the things shared use kitchens. So that's a monthly resource that you can also sign up for on our website to stay in the know. And then finally, our biggest event thing going on right now, which I'm in the throes of planning for, is our Food Incubation Summit. So last year, we held the first NIC Summit, which was in Minneapolis, St. Paul. We had over 80 kitchens attend that event, and we were shocked by the waiting list of 30 kitchens that were trying to get in the door. We were limited by our venue, which was donated by the Good Acre there in Minneapolis, which is one of the clients of the Food Corridor. But there's so much interest right now in this space that we kind of grew the summit this year to be in Austin, Texas, a larger space. And we're already 75% sold out of the tickets, and it's not till October. So we're definitely going to sell out. We are super excited about the content that we're going to be bringing. We have a 101 track and a 201 track. 101, obviously, the planning stages for shared use kitchens and programming. 201 is scaling up local businesses, scaling up food businesses, and how to connect those businesses with ecosystem services so that they can grow and thrive. So a lot of it's peer-to-peer learning. There's going to be a lot of mentoring 101 sessions, just a lot of opportunities for networking and bringing this community together, which is super exciting for us. And then, Jodee, you might geek out a little bit about this. So coming soon, we partnered with ESI. So ESI has done some of the baseline data, also one of the other organizations that's been kind of looking at shared kitchens on a national scale. And they have done this U.S. kitchen incubator project. They did it first in 2004. They did an update in 2016. And then this year, I reached out to them early this year and I was like, are you guys planning on doing this again? Because it would be really great to have more information on this. We're really excited that we partnered with them on this. Last year, I think the response rate was, or the last time they did it, the response rate was 63. By partnering with us, we were able to increase that response rate to 193 responses. And that data is going to start coming out here pretty soon. We were on a call yesterday kind of going over the executive summary of what the makeup of this report's going to be. But just as a little teaser, I pulled, while Jodee was talking, I pulled a few of the really cool trends. So you can see, sorry, the slide is not that great, but 2019 to 2015, you can see the growth in respondents. So the amount of data that we have, we increased the number of states that are represented by 4, but we increased the actual respondents from 61 to 180, which is super exciting. So lots of more valuable data. We see that there was a difference between the number of for-profit and the number of nonprofit kitchens. So the for-profit kitchens saw a decrease, and the nonprofit kitchens saw a little bit of an increase. And then the final one is we ask people the primary goal of their facility. So you can see incubator is still tapping in on the highest commissary kitchens, food production facilities, community kitchens, which we mentioned today, other, and then food innovation hub and accelerator. So lots of cool data coming out of that report. We're super excited. I actually will be keynoting at the Food Incubation Summit on this report. So it'll be the first reveal of this data. So if you're interested in coming to the summit, I get your tickets soon, because like I said, I'm assuming it's going to sell out. So hopefully those resources are super helpful for you guys, and I'll also take any questions you have at this time.
Awesome. Thank you. And so everybody can use the chat box or the Q&A box to start submitting questions. There's one question in the chat box now from Elizabeth. We can start with that one. And it says, when a kitchen is a nonprofit with users operating for-profit businesses, how do kitchens keep accounting separate? In other words, how do kitchens protect the possibility of being eligible for foundation funding? I don't know if anybody wants to answer that.
Yeah, so as I understand it, the nonprofit is a mission-based organization that has specific community-based indicators. Oftentimes those are number of businesses that you're supporting, number of employees that are supported through those businesses. So I think they're basically just looked at as completely different operations. Similarly, it's how the health department will regulate it. So it'll help regulate the kitchen as a unit, but each of the food businesses under that are required to have their own business license, insurance, food handler card, etc. So they're really kind of looked at as completely separate entities, but the nonprofit's able to aggregate up the business data of those of the businesses that are in the kitchen, and many of them are starting to keep track of specific monetary and growth and revenue trends of those businesses for those very reasons.
Awesome. All right, so we don't have any other questions right now, so we'll give it another minute to let people send those in. So I know we answered a couple as we went. But if anybody has any other questions about the materials that were shared today, feel free to go ahead and ask now.
Ashley, I had a question based on what Beth was saying. Some of those kitchens that are really small or casual can get tapped out. In your kitchen door online listing, can they say if they're full, or can?
Yeah, so they can in the notes section. So there's a section
Okay.
that you can basically like customize what they want to say to the public. So they might say, we're full at this time, please contact another kitchen or our partner kitchen or whatever. So they can manage it from that perspective. Or they can contact us and ask us to remove their listing for the time being. So we've actually had a few that said, you've sent us too many leads, we're full, like we can't even, answer them anymore. So please hide our listing for the time being, and then we'll do that until they contact us again and are looking for additional renters.
There was another question that was submitted from Mark. It says, does a for-profit shared kitchen model work?
So this is a really great question. It really depends. So, you know, the model of a commissary kitchen has been around, I mean, is not new. A shared use kitchen is essentially a physical space that is shared by multiple tenants. And those were traditionally called commissary kitchens. The term shared use kitchens is a more broad, a more broadened term in order to allot for all the different models that are being that are starting to roll out. But many folks that start their own food businesses have to find access to commercial rental space, and oftentimes will rent that out in their off time, which leads them into a more commissary model, or being regulated as a commissary kitchen. So that model's been around for a long time. Whether it's profitable or not, I think, is how you run the kitchen and what your rates are. We do see a lot of trends moving towards additional revenue opportunities for kitchens. So rentals alone is pretty tough, especially for a nonprofit kitchen. Actually, if you're trying to subsidize the prices for those rentals, it's going to be really tough to cover your costs. And so oftentimes we see a lot of folks adding ecosystem services. So some of the for-profit kitchens will add classes for obtaining your ServSafe, or will open the kitchen to rent it out for cooking classes, or will a lot do events and will rent out their space for events, or many of the new emerging kitchen models are doing co-packing for their food businesses. So there's a lot of new emerging ecosystem services that these folks are able to layer on top of their model that are leading to more potential for profitability.
All right. So we are at 1:01, so to be respectful of everybody's time, I know our speakers have other things to do as well. We can go ahead and wrap up. I just want to say thank you to Ashley, Jodee, and Beth. This was super great. The number of resources shared is really amazing, and so hopefully everybody will follow up with those if you're interested. I will send this recording out through the OSPN listserv, and if our speakers share their PowerPoints, I will also share those as well. So thanks again, everybody. This was super, super great, and we'll see you next month for the September virtual convening. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you guys.